Welcome to the Loaded Goat. I'm Aaron.
And I'm Chris.
And Christopher's upset that he didn't get to do the podcast shirtless.
Back in the day before we were YouTube stars, we could get away with whatever we wanted. I once did one the whole time with Aaron just looking at the top of my head.
That is true. I was just looking at the top of his head, but this is the first time he's ever just shown up without a shirt. But I made him put one on for the viewers. So today we're doing Aunt Bee's Romance. Interesting take on a kind of the same kind of lane of the type of episode anytime Aunt Bee seems to have a potential suitor. I
want to know there's some writer in the writer's room that has this consistency of, I feel like, did their aunt, or they had an older woman that lived in his childhood house, and she just got grifted over and over again, which shaped his world experience in a way that he was like, well, this is the only thing that happens in an older woman's life.
I mean, I don't have any real aunts like this, but I feel like there's a lot of people who have aunts that have been married several times.
Yeah.
And uncles. I mean, it happens.
But also, like, the take that they always have on this, though, is that people are marrying for, like, a home, like a roof over their head. It's not even like she has like a gajillion dollars and they're trying to make off easy in a divorce settlement. They're like, I'm just looking for a bed and a roof on my head. It's like, what?
So, all right. So there is an episode of Mayberry RFD where Aunt Bee, actually in the Color episodes too, but in Mayberry RFD, Aunt Bee literally gets engaged to a ship captain. And this is like, okay, you're actually talking about Aunt Bee marrying someone or getting together with somebody who's not just some annoying guy living by the seat of his pants. I mean, I feel like everybody we see that her get with is just, or that is interested in her is probably like, I mean, you talk about a swipe writer. I mean, they're all these just, it would be like, hi, I'm George. I'm unemployed and live with my parents. I'm thinking about all of the like Facebook or the profiles. I'm like, well, these guys have nothing to offer. And it makes me think this might have been Aunt Bee's type. And the reason I think that is because I wouldn't have thought this before, but Aunt Bee's sister married Ollie.
Oh, interesting.
And Ollie is kind of in the same vein of these guys.
Maybe it's who maybe the male figures in their life as children were grifters, and I'm going to say pennywaggers. That's a new term, but like they were like wagging their penny at people.
I mean, it's hard, but it's really hard to imagine. Like Aunt Bee came out very, very well adjusted and like raised a family and seemed like her husband seemed like a nice person. From her late husband seemed like a nice person. So it's hard to really. Maybe we're not supposed to get too deep in the psychology. So we don't need to bring up, as Barney would say, Sigmund Freud.
Yes, I agree. I agree.
But you are just kind of like, come on, Aunt Bee, you deserve better. We deserve better. Everybody deserves better. Just give these guys the boot.
Yep.
Yeah. But she seems to, the guy was just annoying. But Aunt Bee kind of was like, when it was time for him to leave, it was time for him to leave too. So maybe we should give Aunt Bee credit where credit's due.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. You want to dive in?
Dive in.
All right. This episode first aired on October 19th, 1964. I will say these episodes start off at a fairly leisurely pace most of the time. This was an unusually leisurely pace for this show to begin.
Right out of the gun. I mean, honestly, I didn't pick up on that. So I'd like to hear more about what you're saying.
Okay. So we open at the Taylor household with Andy and Opie carrying on about how great the breakfast Aunt Bee made was. Aunt Bee then says to Opie, she'll make a fried bride someday. Cut to really some dramatic stuff. It goes nowhere. Opie needs Andy to sign a form for a field trip to a bakery in Mount Pilot to see how donuts are made, and then takes a moment to talk about how they go take field trips, but they never go to fields.
Did you ever have any of these good old days of field trips? Like, I think I did a donut shop too.
I never did a donut shop. I never did a donut shop. So every year when I was in junior high, we'd take an annual field trip to Dollywood, and it was pretty awesome. And then
experience.
Yeah, it was a good learning experience. You'd see the Bald Eagle Sanctuary. You'd ride some good rides. You'd see a guy. You'd see blacksmiths. I mean, you'd see a lot of good stuff. Yeah, we'd go to we would take some trips to old forts. We'd go to museums. We took a field trip to a Japanese restaurant in Knoxville and got to see how Japanese food was made.
Oh, that's cool.
That was cool. We kept throwing.
I would love to do that now.
Yeah, I mean, who wouldn't? Awesome. Now, I mean, I think we weren't old, and it would be frowned upon if we decided to do what we did there and take ice cubes out of our glasses and toss them on the big grill and just watch them melt really fast. But that would be frowned upon. But yeah. So anyway, we're there. So we're talking about a field trip. They then go to another exciting point, going through the mail. And Aunt B gets a letter from Raleigh and can't figure out who has sent it to her. However, she knows it's somebody. And then finally, Andy insists that she open it. Now, none of this is bad, is not entertaining or not fun to watch. But we are 3 minutes into this episode.
Yeah. And we're going in. Yeah, that's true. We're going in hot. There's been no fun and games before. Barney and Andy aren't, putzing around. We're right in it. But which is weird.
What I was saying is leisurely. It's a very leisurely start.
I totally missed that. I thought I meant. I thought you were saying this was faster than others.
No. I was saying it was leisurely. I was like, why are we not on the same page here? This is like a very leisurely beginning of the show.
I'm going to take some Adderall and just see if I can focus a touch more.
This is fine. That's it. I mean, we're not supposed to confuse each other when we're doing this podcast.
Yeah, we don't need any of this language politics.
Yeah. So she is surprised and delighted. The letter is from an old male friend that she's
upset and expected it.
No, you don't. We can't do this the whole episode. That's going to get confusing.
I'll be done.
All right. She is surprised and delighted. It's from an old male friend that she hasn't seen in 20 years. His name is Roger Hanover. She says he's not an old beau, but she used to keep company with him and that he's not married. And Andy says they should invite him over.
The timeline of 20 years doesn't totally make sense, though, right? When did Aunt B's husband die?
Well, she says she hasn't seen him in 20 years. She didn't say she hasn't kept time with him. She may have hung out with him when they were younger.
Yeah, okay.
Aunt B says she'll get around to writing him sooner or later. And then the minute Andy and Opie leave, Aunt B rushes to write him a letter. And later that evening, Andy and Aunt B are on the front porch. And Andy asks about Roger, and it turns out that she has invited him over for Friday night supper. But it's no big deal. And then Andy asks what time she is going to the beauty parlor on Friday, just kind of subtly. And she says 9:30 without even thinking.
It's like, it would be cute. This would be cute if Andy, and it's just like, oh, Andy really knows Aunt B. But really, he's probably just watched this episode and he's acted in this episode 4 different times before. So he's like, well, this is what I do now.
Well, I don't think we need to. I will say, Andy in this episode, it's a little flipped. He's usually a lot more skeptical.
Oh, yeah, I agree. But he also has literally no patience in this episode either. There are some weird Andy character choices maybe we should talk about at the end.
I gotta be honest with you. I don't know. I don't know. I don't think he was standoffish. I mean,
no, I don't think he is, but he's like less. He's just like less. It's very clear, and you get this in the scene with Opie when Opie's like, "All right, so you don't like him either." What he's doing is he's acting like accordingly. The guy ignored him once. Or annoyed him once, and so now he's dead to him, and like never going back. That's how my father raised me. That's how I like to live in the world. He's acting a little bit like my kin.
All right. Well, I'm sorry. We need to work. We might need to talk through some of this.
John Lithgow, however, once didn't thank my dad for holding a door, and I'd never watched Third Rock from the Sun because of it. And once I was behind Representative Kennedy.
Patrick Kennedy or Joe Kennedy?
Joe Kennedy, and he also didn't hold the door open for me, and then stood in line in front of me at Starbucks and like tried to read the menu. It's like, you don't do that at Starbucks. You know exactly what you want going in.
So it wasn't Joe Kennedy's positions on things like Venezuela and other areas. It was more like just the fact that he didn't hold the door and held the menu.
Personally wronged.
Personally wrong. Okay. All right. John Lithgow. So you never got to see like Harry and the Hendersons or Cliffhanger or a lot of other so many great things that John Lithgow has done.
You know, I was raised with I like this line of inquiry. Actor talent doesn't mean anything if you're a jerk.
Yeah. I don't believe that.
Oh, really? Oh, I strongly believe that.
You strongly believe that?
Yeah.
So
if I'm a director and my actor's a big pain in the butt, I'm firing him.
I have a theory. I have a strong theory about life and about how you in the workplace and about how you comport yourself and about relationships and everything. It's very simple. Your productivity always needs to outperform or make more or be more provide more of than your BS. And for the most part, like, you know, when a lot of the times when an employee gets fired, I mean, I think for the most part, if you're great, you're a great employee, it should be like 95 productivity, 5 BS. And I feel like in the workplace, most of the time when somebody loses their job or is fired, their BS is their BS is taking up way much more of their productivity. It's outshining that. This is not groundbreaking, but it is kind of one of these things when you stop and think about it. So if you're a mediocre character actor and you're very, very difficult and you're really hard to work with, I can see why people don't want to work with you. If you have a reputation for somebody like Lea Michele for being extraordinarily difficult and having all of these issues, but you can command the stage like she did in Funny Girl, I feel like you get a little more leeway on how much you can actually churn out.
Yeah, okay. All right. I love the dragon of Lea Michele. This is good.
I mean, and that being said, I don't know if John Lithgow I will say it is one of these things where since somebody says he didn't thank me for holding the door, there was a politician that my dad despised that I told him one time, I was like, yeah, I held the door open for this person. They didn't say thank you. And Dad just says, I tell that to everybody. I was like, there's a lot of other stories I've told you about politicians that you have never shared. This one, you're like, oh, this sums up. I was like, sums up who it is. And I'm like, I don't know if it does. Doesn't matter.
What? Come on. I told you all this stuff.
It was Hillary Clinton.
Oh, she didn't say thank you?
No.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
These East Coast elites.
I know. It's so awful. I think she was also having a conversation with people. It was one of these things where I'm also a little bit like, I've been slighted by a lot of other people in life. This is not somebody not. Yeah, I didn't see you get up all up in arms about that. But you know, this person doesn't thank me for holding the door open for him, and it's like it's like a travesty.
One quick thing on this that I think. Was it an automatic door? So you just like stepped on the thing to open it for her?
No, I pulled the door. It was the door coming out. It was a door.
There's a pretty good chance that that's what my Joe Kennedy situation was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there you go. I mean, but I'm just saying it's one of those things where I kind of feel like famous people having doors held open for them. It's, if there's a bunch of people, you're not always going to get a thank you. So that's my take. But if we're talking about like Don Knotts, if you found out Don Knotts had been really difficult on the set, I wouldn't have thrown a fit because I would have been like, whatever Don Knotts, unless Don Knotts was disappearing for days at a time. Actually, let's break this down. Tony Soprano, James Gandolfini. James Gandolfini went through some periods on the set of The Sopranos where he was very troubled. There was a period where he disappeared for a few days.
Really?
Yeah, but he was Tony Soprano. I mean, he carried that entire show for the most part. So there is a certain point where I feel like you do get a little bit of leeway depending on what type of productivity you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, I mean, clearly your theory is rock solid. I'm way into it.
Are you really, or are you blowing smoke?
No, I really am. I'm super solid on it. You know. Yeah.
Well,
so
I appreciate
agree
that.
with you. And I'm sorry that James had those demons that he was going through. You know.
I'm sorry you did too. I mean, I have to imagine like they would talk about Barney, like Don Knotts would say playing Barney Fife would exhaust him for times. I can't imagine what playing Tony Soprano does to you.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So that Friday, Andy comes in with ice cream, and
what a huge tangent that was.
We just got
real.
We got sidetracked. Yeah, this is what happens when you catch it, depending on when you catch us when we record. But Andy comes in with ice cream that he has bought from the store. Aunt Bee looks great, and it turns out Roger's going to be there around 5:00, and he's going to stay a few days. That is always one of these things where I'm always a little like, okay,
yeah, 100%. It's like, all right, we're going on our first date. We're going to Vermont for a week and a half. See what happens. See
if we enjoy each other. And so she's trying to figure out where to sit. And then Roger says her name. And it's a little strange. He just kind of walked right in. He didn't knock on the door.
Well, we learn a little bit later that that's his character.
Yeah. Yeah. He has brought her some chocolate. He's played by Wallace Ford, who started out as a vaudeville performer, and he was a leading man in B movies in the 30s and 40s. This was actually his last television role.
Leading man in B movies. Man, what an asterisk.
I don't know if it's an asterisk. John Wayne was a leading man in B movies in the 30s. And I mean, there's a lot of people that are leading men and leading actors in B movies.
It's the Adam, what's his name? The guy everyone knows.
Adam what?
Mr. Deeds.
Oh, Adam Sandler's not a B movie leading man. Adam Sandler. I'm talking like B movie leading man is like straight to video at this point leading man.
And that's not Adam Sandler to you? Interesting. All right. Okay.
I mean, not maybe now, but I mean, he made Uncut Gems a few years ago. I mean, that was a major movie. I mean, I mean, when I think of B movie leading men, I'm kind of like,
like Rob Riggle again.
We're not bringing in Rob Riggle. I'm just trying to think of like Dolph Lundgren when he's making action movies that go straight to video. That's That's being a B movie leading man.
Okay.
Leading man. So that's what I'm thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah. So in the kitchen, Andy tells Opie to be on his best behavior, and they both discuss how this is a big deal and how he could marry Aunt Bee. I mean, I'm like, hey, everybody's getting all excited about getting married. I mean, I'm like, Aunt Bee seems like she's, I know she's excited to see him, but it's kind of premature. And this is kind of like, and so Andy goes to shake Roger's hand, and I mean, I kind of think about the first time you met your wife's father. If he'd gone to shake your hand and you'd went, psych, and put your hand back behind your ear, and because that's basically the equivalent of what Roger does to Andy, but he says hang it on the wall.
When I met my father-in-law, I was in high school and I was walking through the house. I said hi to him. I offered him a toothpick, which he thought was super classy. And I had a big glass bottle of Pellegrino that he thought was a bottle of wine. And then we walked into my wife's room and he was like, this is weird. These 17-year-olds are like, yeah, we're going to go drink some wine. And
That's funny. That's funny. Did he say anything or did he just not care?
I mean, we shared a little bit over the toothpick and then, we're good kids, so it was fine. But.
Yeah, no, that is funny though. But at least there was no. I mean, I just feel like if I'd done that to my future father-in-law, he would have been like, "Who is this? Who is this clown?"
Yeah, and you're like, "No Egypt trips for you."
That's right. And he's So Roger's obviously an over the top joker. He tells Aunt Bee a dirty joke as she's taking him up to his room.
I googled that dirty joke and I couldn't find it. Like what we heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've got a mind for figuring these things out and I couldn't do it.
That's the only thing you put work in on research on this whole thing. He's trying to figure out what dirty joke Roger told Aunt Bee. And then the next morning he does a thing with Opie where he crawls his hand up Opie's arm and bops him in the nose. He goes, hey, isn't that funny? I mean, I'm just like, this guy is kind of like, I mean, he doesn't even seem like he carries on a regular conversation. But Aunt B thinks he's a hoot. But I wonder, you don't know if Aunt B thinks he's in hindsight, you look like, oh, Aunt B is like really enjoying him, but Aunt B just might be like, hey, it's just great to see this dude again, and he's kind of doing his old thing, yeah. And Andy and Opie call an audible, and they go to the diner for breakfast because they just don't want to be
smart play.
Yeah, I don't blame them.
Check in with Juanita.
And Opie asks Andy if he thinks he will be their uncle as we go to commercial, and Andy's not crazy about the idea. And Harvey Bullock, who wrote the script, said he modeled Roger after an annoying insurance salesman he knew who had the same name. And he said fans would come up to him and tell him how much they hated the character, and he thinks that's really a testament to Wallace Ford's performance. And I would agree. I mean, because he kind of had like what I would guess like a Lloyd Bridges type thing going on. Like like an old Lloyd Bridges, like being like, here, hey, come here, boy, you're gonna do this or you're gonna do that, or obviously like on Seinfeld, like I think of the airplane movies and Hot Shots, but I also think of when he's Izzy Mandelbaum on Seinfeld and he's telling Jerry how strong he is and everything like that. Yeah, so correct. It's like, so it kind of just reminds me of
a very good comparison.
Yeah. So so it's one of those things where that's kind of just that old man he's acting like he's superior, but he's kind of just out of sorts all the time. It seems like.
Yep. Totally agree.
Yeah.
Classic
Classic Lithgow.
Yeah.
Oh man, I'm sorry. You really need to. You need to put aside your harsh feelings and enjoy some of the work of John Lithgow. He's done some very. I've seen the man on Broadway. He's an amazing actor. So this episode was produced by Pod Machine. They do great podcasts at a great rate. Go to podmachine.com to learn more and enter Loaded Goat at checkout for a 10% discount. After the break, we're actually treated to one of a fairly memorable scene in the Andy Griffith Show history. It's Andy walks up to Floyd in town. It's 92 degrees outside, and Floyd is fanning himself. And Andy quotes Mark Twain saying, "Everyone complains about the weather, but nobody does anything about it."
That's Calvin Coolidge.
That's what Floyd says. And so they go back and forth, and it's just funny. And the ability of Howard McNear just to almost look like a guy who's to play a guy who's keeping up with the conversation, but just kind of loses his train of thought and then picks it back up it's just always so entertaining to watch.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not lost to me. It's so sweet every time that he gets to be in an episode. So I like it.
Yeah. And Aunt B and Roger walk up from the grocery store, and Roger tells Floyd that he runs a clip joint. I mean, because he can't even just have a normal conversation there. And they leave, and Floyd is impressed with him. And then Floyd asks Andy if he likes him. Now, this is out of character, because Andy would not, if Andy was going to complain about not liking somebody, especially somebody who may marry his aunt, he would not tell Floyd, who would tell everybody.
Yeah, correct.
But he does. And he says he can't stand him, and he finds him really difficult. And then they start talking about the heat, and Floyd repeats the Mark Twain line, but then attributes it to Calvin Coolidge. It's like he learned nothing in this conversation.
I love it.
Yeah. So in this scene, as I mentioned, is pretty memorable to fans. And after dinner, Roger is helping Aunt B with the dishes, and she says she doesn't want to get his lovely tie dirty. That's not a lovely tie.
No, she wants him to get out of the kitchen.
Yeah. And then he kisses her on the neck before she shoos him away. I mean, that's almost...
and I'm not defending him. He sneaks up behind her and then kisses her, which is the first lip action we're seeing on this show, which is a little much. I think that would be a turning point for me.
I mean, I can't imagine walking up to anybody and doing... I mean, I can imagine walking up to one person and doing that, but that's I'm married. Yeah, it's after seeing you with your shirt off when you jumped on this podcast. But I mean, that's almost to me kind of more intimate than just trying to give somebody a kiss, like giving somebody leaning in to give somebody a kiss.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So Roger comes out, and he sees Andy trying to fix the plug, and he takes it away and cuts it from Andy, and he calls him boy as he's doing that, and he cuts the thing too close. And then Andy comes out, or Aunt B comes out, and they go for a walk. It's just one of those things where you're like, this guy's just annoying. Mm-hmm. And Opie asks Andy if he likes Roger, and Andy is diplomatic and then tries to send Opie to bed. And Andy then, but Opie wants an answer, and Andy says there's some good in everyone, including Roger. And Opie says, I feel the same way. I don't like him either, which is like...
Can't lie to your kids.
Can't lie to your kids. The next day, Andy is potting petunias, and Roger comes up and tells him what to do, and Andy just shuts him down.
Not today, sir.
Not today. And Roger was going to go to town to get more cigars, but he comes back and says he's misplaced his money, and so Andy loans him a $50. And then Andy finally asks Roger what his plans are, and he hints that he would like to marry Aunt B and then move into his house.
Which is like, this is an acceleration.
It's an acceleration. And he wants Andy's approval, but if Andy doesn't approve, he'd continue on to Florida if he had the money. He just needs a loan of $400 or he'd have a new uncle.
And he'll definitely pay it back, you know?
Yeah. And this is one where I felt kind of like Andy doesn't even have to play chicken here. Andy could just say, you're not moving in here.
Yeah,
this is my house. I mean, you know, and I mean, you can, if you and Aunt B want to, if you and Aunt B want to get married and you want to try to find a new home and you want to try to find a place around here, you're more than welcome to. But you're not staying here. Yeah. But Andy basically just doesn't bite, and he tells Roger he can find Aunt B in the kitchen, and they come back out. And Aunt B tells him that Roger's leaving for Florida. Roger then asks Andy if he ever played poker. And he doesn't call him boy this time. He calls him sheriff, which I think he kind of realizes he's Andy kind of called his bluff. And Andy says, I used to be pretty good at it, as we go to commercial. And there you go.
I don't have much to say at the end of this, but while you were speaking, I did come up with a kind of an existential Andy Griffith Show question.
Okay.
Okay. Are you ready for it?
I'm ready for it.
This is a deep one. Do you think Mrs. Doubtfire is modeled off of Aunt B, the character that Robin Williams plays? They look similar. The is very much Aunt B.
Yeah, I mean, Aunt B.
It's not Tootsie.
It's not Tootsie. I mean, if it's Aunt B, it's a cross between Aunt B and Robin Williams improv wild humor, where Mrs. Doubtfire would just have lines that you never saw coming.
Yeah. All right. I just feel like I was really onto something really clever there. So
I mean, I
would share it with the world.
I mean, Aunt B is an iconic character. If she was factored into Robin Williams' portrayal of Mrs. Doubtfire, that would not shock me in the least.
I'm willing to say unequivocally, which is a hard word to say, she is.
Okay. All right. Well, I support you. In the epilogue, Roger leaves and Andy asks Aunt B if she is sad to see him go. She goes, I was actually worried he was going to ask me to marry him, and then kind of notes that a little of him goes a long way, which is the understatement of the episode. And they agree to shake on being happy he's gone. And then he pulls his hand back and says, hanging on the wall as we close.
Funny.
Yeah.
All right.
Whistles. Yeah.
All right. I'm giving it 5, but only because of the Calvin Coolidge bit. Otherwise, it would be a 4.
So
we've done this so many times.
We've done this so many times. This is one that's hard. This is hard for me because I can give the same plot. Doing the same plot a few times, a little bit of leeway if it's done with a variation. But these episodes, they make me. Watching really annoying men try to take advantage of Aunt B, and it all coming out in the end kind of is not. It's not like watching that 5th episode is not like watching the 5th episode about a manhunt. that Barney and Andy are pursuing it's just not the same thing.
I agree.
Yeah. So I'd probably go 5 as well.
Okay. All right.
So any final thoughts?
No, sir. Thank you for agreeing with me.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for your time. And thank you for putting on a shirt.
Oh, my pleasure.
Yeah. All right. And thank you for listening. Check us out on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcast. And if you think about it, subscribe. Next week, we'll do one I really enjoy called Barney's Bloodhound. And until then, Christopher, hanging on the wall.
Oh.